This is Meet the Authors event of Volume 8, Desire, with Hõbe Ilus, author of The Slow Path Home short film featured in our latest volume. The reason why we do this type of encounters is because we in Wimblu believe that stories have the ability to bring us together around a collective imagination and create a refuge where we can connect with other people and the world. That's why we set out to create spaces of community around stories, to come together to navigate these uncertain times, connect with different perspectives, and imagine other possible worlds. The Meet the Authors events encounters are part of our efforts to connect the persons behind our stories and create a community of storytellers addressing the intersections of ecology and spirituality. These conversations allow us to delve deeper into the themes that each story explores, the creative processes involved, and the worldviews from which they emerge. Like I said before, our guest today is Hõbe Ilus, an Estonian filmmaker with a master's in documentary from the Baltic Film and Media School. She is fascinated by perception and memory, two recurring themes in her creative explorations. She is the author of The Slow Path Home, a short film documentary about her desire to make peace with the place she once called home. Um, this is a story, like I said, you can find and watch at our website on Volume 8, Desire. And I would like to start this conversation with one quote because one of these days I was reading, and it's really funny because sometimes when you're thinking on a theme, you start seeing this theme everywhere. So I was reading about this book about trees. It's a fiction book written by Richard Powers. It's called The Overstory, and it has a phrase that kind of I wanted to start this conversation with. It goes like this: Life has a way of talking to the future. It's called memory. It's called genius. To solve the future, we must save the past. One of the themes we're most interested in, Hõbe, that you work on through the short film, um, is that of perception and memory. So the first question I wanted to make is, what do you think is the relationship between territory and memory, and how did making this film enable the exploration of these concepts for you?
Thank you. I must say that my very initial reason why I actually started making this film is another territory, and it's in my head, and it's the reoccurring dreams that I had. It was for years that I kept on going to the place that I made this film about, my very first home. And these dreams, I was kind of scared of these dreams. I never felt content. I always felt that I'm not welcome there. I always felt that this is not my home anymore. And that was like the initial reason why I decided that maybe like making this film, going back there will kind of solve this. It was like 6 or something years ago, and it didn't change. I still still go there very often. Um, but I guess what I thought back then is that I felt that I had lost home. That once I will have a home of my own, once I will have, really dealt with these uh, problems or like these issues, that I will just quit these dreams and this will be done by like that. Now I have a home. I have a very strong sensation of belonging somehow in my current state, but I still go there. And guess that's the thing, that it's so present in me, this place, that this is me, like this particular place on earth, this territory, these trees, this river, this slope, this road, these I don't know, sounds, all the landscapes that are there. This is me, and this is how I am, and I will never, I could never resolve that, and maybe that's something that I kind of also concluded in the end of that film. That it's not about kind of, yeah, 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 that it's me. But that's my answer, maybe.
Yeah. So there is like a link that you found or that you find between um like your dreams. That's really interesting. Like the dreams are also like this is like a recurring dream that you have that takes you to this place of memory that you were a child and awakens this feelings. It makes us feel. I mean, it makes me feel when I'm watching the film that also um, in this contact that you have with with the place when you are walking around and also kind of awakens these memories. But the film has a really particular way of presenting that memory because it's actually makes me feel like it's the same landscape that is remembering or helping you remember that memory. Like so it's really interesting to see that there is like an ability to remember that is transferred to the landscape. Um, I wanted to know if did you consider the landscape to be a protagonist from the beginning, or was something that came up in the process?
Yeah, I think no. The answer is no. I never had the landscape as a protagonist. Uh, in my mind, I had the reason, I had the urge to make peace. And I even didn't want myself to be the protagonist of the film. I actually was quite lucky because I had a cinematographer with me who, without me knowing, filmed me in this location. So it's actually pretty, uh, and that's why maybe for me it was okay to present myself like that in this film, because I didn't know that I was being filmed and like reconnecting to the place or the land or the elements of this area. It was very very sincere, like these encounters that I had there. I did have obviously the uh, VHS material from the past. And I did know that somehow I might not, technically try to connect them with the past and present through this material and the the images in the old one. But what I also noticed is that, you go there and you know it all because you somehow, it's in you. So it's very familiar to you. And I remember I had a sound designer from Argentina at the time, and he really first tried to kind of make it really bold. And I remember telling him, no, it's like vacuum. There is nothing, that there were so like these very strong characteristics also that only and you know them so well that you can, because it was your home. It's, as I said, part of you. So yeah, we just reconnect with yourself there as well and your memories.
In that same like exploration and making of the film, um, did I mean I know there's a lot of the ideas and the concept of memory that you're talking about is more related to your inner world. But what did the landscape did for you, like in terms of your longing for home? Because it's a whole decision to go to the place and talk from the place than just taking the archive films or whatever, or do it somewhere else, or do it in your new home. Like you said, you have a new home. But what did the landscape did in terms of the longing that you talk about on the film.
There is this very big portion of the film is actually going to the place, and I guess that's also plays a big part of the whole I don't know how to you get back there. And it was only later when I actually put my mother's
Mhm.
voice giving directions on top of this little 7 kilometer walk that it was from the main road. And I guess this is the road where it starts to where you start to understand, okay, I'm getting there, because like so many times in my past I had done that very same road to get to that place. And and it's and it there were like two moments particularly, because a lot of the other areas had changed, but that road hadn't changed, and that tree in the end hadn't changed. So these were like the two things that it was exactly the same as I once remembered. And once when I lived this reality, it was very logical, but suddenly it hit me because I had forgotten about that road and that tree, and then I was back there. So these were really tangible, like moments, and I couldn't experience this anywhere else. It needed to be exactly there because I wasn't looking for these particular things. It just happened while going there. And maybe especially with the tree, that I didn't want to make a film about me seeing a tree, but then I found all these photographs of me being a child and so connected to that tree, and also like this thought in the end that I think kind of detaches me from this idea of a landscape, that I realized that it's not about this very physical space, but that I have this home in me, as and then I come back to the beginning, that it's part of me. So
Yeah.
it's who I am.
That element of the tree is really subtle and at the same time is really powerful. When I watched the film, well, I have watched it many times already, but for the first time, it was like kind of, oh, you kind of see something, a relation happen, awakening there, like, oh, and you connected. Then when you watch it again, you connected with the beginning, so it's really subtle and really powerful at the same time. And it's really interesting that you didn't like really consider the landscape as a protagonist, but as me as a viewer, I really I really see that has a lot of power. And I actually was when we were looking at the film at the beginning, I remember telling Alessandra and Carolina, the other editors, that it felt like the landscape was showing you like the memories, in a sense that the landscape was helping you out figure out whatever piece you needed to make. And it's also really interesting that you don't really know what is the conflict, but if there's a conflict there happening, but and this is more just a comment, but I think that it's really interesting to see. Sometimes we send out um, our 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 stories, and they're rooted in landscape, and we don't know until somebody tells, oh, you have something related there. It's really interesting to see
But
that.
it is definitely like a huge part of it, because and this is just the difference, that I didn't do it knowingly, but obviously
Mhm.
like it did all sorts of things to me, and I have very strong connection to that river that floats through there. Like, I mean, it was like one of my biggest fears and fascinations in my my childhood, and but once I decided to go back there, it wasn't my my thought that I would like to see that river. It is just something that happened really on the spot, and maybe that's why it comes through like that as well.
Mhm. I also wanted to add that I find it really interesting. This that you are mentioning, that you go there and then you sort of recognize the tree, you recognize the road, you recognize the river. There are a lot of other elements, but these are the ones that are sort of resonating and pointing towards something within. And I think this is lovely because this is, it's a lot of what we speak at Wimblu as well, the fact that these landscapes outside have a resonance with the landscapes inside, that and only when you sort of come into this contact, into this relationship, then you realize that, oh no, this landscape, it's also within me,
Yeah.
and to recognize also that the landscape within is affected by how we interact with the landscape outside. Yeah.
And this talks about the intertwined network we live in, like the whole sense, not only physical, but also um, spirituality. Is everything has a connection with place, and I'm thinking more about your specific or your personal relationship with the landscape. What do you think is the importance of understanding ourselves as beings that are part of of landscapes and living networks in times where so-called natural spacers are being depleted and some places are being just disappearing?
I've been very attached to the land, like through many generations, and this has been like both from my mother's side and both from my father's side, like this ongoing story that I belong to a land. Like I and at some point in my life, it was very difficult for me to accept this attachment, or like that this forced attachment of it. And that actually led me, there were obviously some other reasons as well, but that led me away from Estonia. And in general, I traveled a lot around in the world. And to my surprise, it's not something that's, common everywhere. For some people, it's not that you have centuries of knowledge of a land behind you. And they don't even maybe care that much, at least seemingly. And then I realized that, and that is also something that's very rooted in me, that I and that's another like story, and maybe another film, another thing that I need to make peace eventually. I think I'm getting there already without the film as well, but it's like this um but this is also this realization that it doesn't need to be evident. It is in you. I mean it's something that's there, and I don't need to be pointed at with the specificalities. I just realized that this is again in me. so
Mhm.
so you whether I want it or not. So it's yeah. I'm not sure if I answered your question precisely, but but
No, I kind of get the idea that it's part of there is a knowledge that is not rational that comes, I think, from our bodies, and from our experience with the landscape itself that tells, like I don't know, that this is not an object, it's a living thing that's around us, and sometimes we have to um, I believe that sometimes we have to go through stages where we don't see that until somebody points at you, oh, this is actually alive. It's next to you, take care of it, or just recognize that it's alive. So that's kind of what I got from your answer, but I think is something that I don't think something that people figure out easily. I'm not nowadays. I think our relationships with our bodies first, and then with whatever is around us is sometimes it's really uh, I don't know, layered, or has a lot of distractions that keep us from actually recognizing it. But
Exactly.
it's interesting to see how also, I mean, probably you had like this connection or contact with landscape, but I have another question, like how like, I believe also through your work is interesting to see how um, documentary or short film or the making of a short film also awakens this type of recognition, of landscape, even though it's not your first objective, let's say that way, kind of is intrinsic on your short film as well. So I find it really interesting.
Yeah. And I've just remembered I've been epigenetics was the theme of that experimental film that I worked as an editor for, and then I just remembered it was all about landscapes as well. So so the genetical landscapes, and you can go on forever, and of course, like. Mm, you recognize yourself somewhere more than other places, and and over the time it's also interesting how I think it's about growing up, and we all go through the phase of this a little bit of denial, all sorts of different little denials maybe combined, but then you start to accept, and even though I always miss the sun and summer here. Then I've also started to see the beauty in this flat, flat field with one tree in the fog, and it probably it's not only just it's not beautiful per se. It's just like the fact that I recognize this, or I know it, and that's the thing that. And suddenly it becomes really sweet to you. So
I wanted to point out like the language that you use, because you said you went abroad and then you recognize this feeling that I belong to this land, and it's very different from saying this land belongs to me. It's just it's a completely different approach, and I recognize that a lot in Estonians when I was there. There's this sort of acceptance or recognition, a very naturally understood thing that you belong to the land and not the other way around. But at the same time, when I was leaving, I could see that there were some political lines that were kind of like, you know, building that the other way around. And I was just maybe you can speak a little bit about the context in which you're making this film, because I know this is a very personal film. It doesn't have to do with politics or anything, but at the same time is immersed in a conversation of what means home, in larger context. Yeah.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And that is the thing that I always thought that it's related to a place, but I don't think so anymore. So it is some sort of um, uh, it would be easy to say like some sort of a sense of belonging, but it's more the fact that it's in you, and also like in the people you chose to be around with. You share the same concept of home, or I don't. It's difficult to describe, but that doesn't ever take away that this particular space or a spot or a landscape or a territory is inherently in you, because these were the first images of the world that I once got, and that brings me back to the beginning, that we I lost that home, and I couldn't do anything about that. And for years, I was grieving, that because I loved the place. It was the only place where I could kind of feel free, or maybe in a sense. And that was due to my uh, let's say father's decisions, life decisions, that he wanted us to grow in the middle of nowhere, and that definitely played another big part of my development, because we had lots of visitors over, but I didn't have like neighbors nearby. It was like the world that I was introduced first in my life. I read a lot because I didn't know what to do with this weather outside. I started to read a lot as a kid. So I think I'm so affected by that place. And once I lost it, I felt I lost a huge part of myself. And then I came to the conclusion I didn't, because it is me, I can't lose it. So physically, of course, and I still go there and I still feel that I'm not welcome there, and that, but that's not bothering me that much anymore.
I just wanted to say that it is a beautiful idea, and I know you're speaking from a very personal place, but it's so relevant at the same time in the times that we're living, because, so many people are losing their homes right now for so many reasons, it could be, political conflict, it could be, climate change, it could be like so many things, these
The relocation that comes.
yeah,
Also,
this loss of home is something that we are living with, either we want it or not. It's something that the reality of our current context entails. We can't deny it, and so I think films like yours sort of like help us navigate that. It gives us, it gives us a road as to what do I do with this sense of loss, and this idea that you get to give a place a home as well. It's not just a place that gives you a home, you give
mhm.
the place a home as well. That is really beautiful. Beautiful idea. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
this also brings up like questions like if all of us have that longing for home at some point. Because when I saw the film, I started thinking about the mango tree in my backyard when I was a kid. I used to play in a lot, and it brought me like these images, especially at the beginning when you see the photos of you in different places, especially in the tree. And I'm thinking that maybe it's a longing that is harder in some of us, or it's stronger in some of us, but it's in all of us. Somehow we all have that, and and yeah, it's really like talking about the epigenetics side that you were mentioning before. I remember that also the memory that comes with genes, all the knowledge that is transferred for like in a species scale, uh, for us to like at the same time continue life, or some memories that will actually allow us to survive basic stuff that we need to know, or our bodies need to do, but it's actually a memory exercise kind of transferring data from through genes. So it's just like a couple of thoughts that I had, because kind of made me think that maybe we all have that longing for home, or a longing for the origin of things somehow. But that's just me thinking too
But I think it's changing a lot and rapidly as well. Like, if I'm honest, like that, for me, like here where I come from, this area, it's very logical. to think and about your roots and where you come from, and it's just like a very logical thing to do, and it doesn't, you don't never question that the importance of that. Or and we are taught this in the school, it's part of our politics, it's part, and it comes down to the language, of course, as well, because otherwise I would never be an Estonian author unless this particular area maintained its language. So it's so this is something that actually fascinates me, that I never thought about, like, that it could be the other way. It wasn't like my, a question, but during my travels, I saw many people who actually have lost their this interest even, and they actually do want to. For instance, there was this one person who said that he's afraid of the nature, that he feels safe in the concrete, because I understand. And then I thought, how could that be? That I never even thought the possibility of that. But then it starts to make sense, because again, it's about how you grew up and what you saw, and like that it's his reality and his way of upbringing. And there were other people who had ancestors across the sea, and I said, "Oh, interesting. That have you ever wondered who they are, what they are?" And it was just like a no, and I was like, "Wow, how can it be?" For me, it's shocking from where I come from and how I was raised up. So, and I'm not sure if it's like I think it's something that happens when you have like this world to freely go around. And also, like now, as you, Ali, mentioned, all this relocating because of different crises. So it's our reality. I think that we've never been that detached from our roots, but at the same time, there is like an urgent need to somehow be at least in understanding that these roots exist just for your own good, not maybe even for the land at that point anymore, but for yourself.
I think it's both ways. I think it would an encounter with your home or your roots, uh, roots that are attached to land or landscapes is gonna help both sides, the landscape and the person and the individual. Yeah, I think it's part of the acknowledgement, we as a species. I mean, this is just me talking. We need to recognize home or planet Earth as home first. Like, this is the whole thing, that we cannot live in a concrete place forever and think that life just, I mean, life has landscape is giving us a lot of information, not only information, but it's feeding us in many ways. So I think that's one of the reflections or ideas that comes from this idea of home. Like home as if we think collectively, we would say, okay, well, this is our only home is planet Earth, and we do have to go to those origins. Somehow it's pointing us to that origin of the land, the land itself. Whether it's a home, um, it's a moving home, the one that you have, or it's a context of one place, sedentary. Um,
Recognize that
yeah,
you are interconnected with the whole things.
I think so. I think so. Yeah. Well, I like to believe that.
Yeah, of course.
I'm also thinking of how beautifully this connects to the film. If we come back to your film, Hõbe, and I'm thinking, you mentioned it yourself, it starts with directions. Like it's almost like like a question, like how do I get back? This is what you mentioned, and you I was just gonna say that there's something that I love about this film, that it's, in a way, its form is so literal, like you have these shots that repeat themselves, and you have this person who's walking and following directions, and so sometimes what you feel is what you are seeing, it's very straightforward, it's very literal, but then there's this whole other layer, that, it's what's coming up out of this conversation, the dreams, this sense of loss, this sense of finding your way back. There are a lot of metaphors, and I was just thinking that, if, like, maybe we could just go back to the film a little bit, and you can speak a little bit about the process, because I know that, like, you go there, you have this VHS material, and that's a baseline, and you start from there, and then you say, I'm gonna go back, and you do the walking, and there's the dreams, and there are all these elements. But then there comes to a point where you have to sit down and you need to structure this for complete strangers who are gonna watch the film, and have no direct access to all these elements that built the film in the first place. And I was just thinking that maybe you can speak a little bit about that, how do you ended up shaping this film, what were, like, the decisions made? Yeah.
I think what really was important to me was also to not only have me in this space, but also my family, and who is very, who kind of lead my voiceover of the film, and maybe that was like the thing that I struggled the most with, the voiceover.
Mhm.
It was similar time of the year. I remember doing a lot of takes because I felt it is still a bit morbid. I admit, but the very first initial ones were way more morbid. Uh, but that doesn't do. And I remember that I didn't want to give out too many words, and I wanted to be more like a poem, about my family, rather than just explaining who is who and what is what. But also, I wanted to place myself through them into the setting, and that's how I eventually end up seeing myself. That you've met with my brothers, my mother, and my father, and then I'm there. And and that was actually one of the most beautiful moments in this editing process, of how to connect these two places, because I never thought about this when I was physically in the place, and when I watched through the window, and later I realized, oh, but this is the same room, and I can, and it really felt how that I was looking back. Maybe when I was physically there, I saw another image from that room. Maybe, but the idea stays the same. That I had this little dream sequence there, and suddenly I saw myself, and it all started to make sense and clear up for me. As I said in the beginning, it all ended up. I had the old material, but I was lucky enough to have a person with me who filmed me. So that actually became the core of the whole thing. Me reconnecting with the place, and I was also. It was by chance, that it was a rainy day, and it did a good contrast between the different footage as well. And I guess that was my way of constructing the story, just to give voice, or to give an explanation to the other family members. Very simple, though important, just to have a space for me later, and to kind of get closer to who I am, why I'm there, and then again by chance. I saw that tree and it all made sense. But it was like I really didn't have a script. I didn't have the layout. Just I just knew that what to do technically, and I just also really immersed myself into this experience of being there after all those years. So, but I must say it was one of the kind of usually all these editing processes are, endless and and you are kind of swimming in this sea of opportunities. But this one, I had an editor as well, and it was very easy to communicate with him, uh, and he yeah. So it came together quite naturally, I must say. So that's.
And I really love what you're mentioning because it does, like, it really comes out in the film, the fact that you manage to speak about yourself, not by speaking about yourself, but about speaking about the relationships that you had in that place. And I really love that because it speaks about like the multiplicity that make us up, that we're not just one thing, but we're actually, in that film, you're someone's sister and you're someone's daughter, and you are, and you're speaking about the geese that flew away, and you're speaking about the tree and the river, and it becomes all these sort of like relationships, and it allows us to see really that we are more of an ecosystem that
Yeah.
just, a single person, which I think I love, and I think it's so important today because so much of well, there's obviously like this individuality of our system right now, but there's also this sort of a spirituality that can be like too self-centered, like I need to know myself and I need to go inside myself. And then what your film is showing that I think it's amazing is that you actually get to know yourselves through others. You get to know yourself through the relationships that you build with others, and this is what this film makes really in a very loving way, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's for me personally, it's very hard to present myself. It takes me ages to make a personal social media post, and it's like I don't know. I have maybe it's to do some sort of self-control thing that I also need to work on. But with that project, it really did feel like a poem, more like making a poem of like these feelings or somehow constructing some sort of mm, things. And that's what I also said in the beginning, that once you give it away, then it's there and it starts to live its own life, and it is a bit detached from you. And I also generally really think I love this to explore this myself in my practice and to see it in other people's practice, like how people perceive, and this is something I think makes this life with other human beings on this planet interesting, that we don't do it the same way, and we all have very logical and some maybe not that logical reasons behind that we have like different ways of understanding. And really I have sometimes these urges to go and to feel the world as somebody else, even for like 5 seconds, just to understand that, oh, okay, that this is so different, that yeah, that we are made of everything, and but at the same time it all has all those instincts there as well. It's a combination of what we have been through plus that we are just biological beings, so yeah.
I was as I'm hearing your answers, I was thinking about Alejandro Jodorowsky, the filmmaker. He has this book called La danza a la realidad in Spanish, reality of the dance of reality in English. And he talks about what he calls psychomagia or psychomagic. I don't know how this is really translated, but something in those lines. And he sees art as a way to heal. So he will create these performances, or he will always have a an objective to solve or something to heal on his own uh, in order to make an art piece or film or whatever. So it's really interesting that I just have a relation there between what you're doing with this film and this approach, because kind of it was like kind of a personal project that you wanted to make this with this place through the film. But I'm thinking, um, did you go to that piece that you were seeking? Did you did you see filmmaking as, not as strictly as Jodorowsky, but
Yeah,
somehow um, like that?
I think it's for me. I've been thinking about this a lot, and like art making in general, and that's something I also sometimes include to my bio, that I try to get away from my roots, not like maybe that directly, but to go a bit further, to have a clear mind, and that there was a time when I also didn't create at all. But that is something I've always, since my very early childhood, there has been some sort of form of creative side involved. And I just realized that I can't without, that it's also for my own sake to create at times at least something. So uh, and I totally understand the importance of it. I do understand also that there is some sort of a form of selfishness in it, but I don't see it in a bad way. I think for some people it is just their way of existence, and that's the way it is, and that's the way it should be, because otherwise they would be out of place, and that would make wouldn't be logical.
Mm.
So and I'm sometimes very rational with it as well. I think, but of course, uh, as long as it does something to somebody, or even lights something, and it doesn't need to be so directly that there is a process of trauma that needs to be healed, and then there is this cure in a form of art. But it comes even to like smaller things, that you get inspired by somebody's work, you start to do something, and eventually you end up helping another person moving the flat. That in this kind of strange connections, and I guess that links art beautifully into life as well. It doesn't just need to be like this confined area. It is part of our existence, and the people who are involved, and the people who read, see, or speak about it.
Did your family watch the film? Did they what were the reactions? Uh,
Mm.
show them the film.
I did show this film. My mom is very involved in the film because she's the one giving directions in the beginning. So she was very close to it. I showed it to my brothers as well, and my father as well. And I guess it depends, it also shows how people perceive that, that one of my brothers is maybe feeling a bit that, what did I do? I was swimming there. That it's very, very direct the way that he sees that. And then there is like yeah, it also shows beautifully how it can be even from the people who are on the screen perceived very differently. Again, coming back from how they are built, what they have gone through, and how they see the world. So
I'm thinking about the beginning of this talk, right before we started, and you were mentioning that this film is kind of like, it's old now. It's maybe 5 years old, something like this. And there's so many layers, like the film is looking back at this, old material, and it's also in the present at that moment, looking at the house. And then now it's you perceiving also the person who made that film, and I'm just curious, that you were mentioning this, but how does it feel now, to be looking at this film and to be speaking about this film again?
yeah, it is definitely revisiting a process that you didn't think that you will even revisit, as you didn't think once you lived in the place, you never thought that one day you will be coming revisiting you. So it's like a yeah, it's mirroring. It's already, but it's like as I said, at that time I was on this kind of verge of breaking like this pain somehow. And as I said, it never resolved the dreaming thing. I often still wake up with again being there and again with the same problems as well, kind of, But the way I take this now is very different. And yeah, and probably it's to do with other things that are happening in my life, that it's yeah, it's interesting to go back into other processes. I used to write quite a lot of poetry also at some period of my life. Haven't written a poem like for the past 6 years. Before that, it was like a common practice. And it's a similar feeling when I read a poem of me being like 25 and I'm like, oh, who is this person? That that and I don't, and maybe the good thing is that I don't have anything against that person. I think it's good. I'm not there anymore. It means that I've gone somewhere, who knows where, but somewhere. And but at the same time, I think it's like yeah, you kind of yeah. I guess we all have it, We see images of ourselves when we were younger, and we think of the problems we had back then, and it's another. It's you, but it's in a different time and different setting.
If you want to support our project, you can share this episode, visit our digital magazine wimblu.com, subscribe to our newsletter, or join our Patreon community where you can access exclusive content starting at $3 a month. Your support allows us to create and share content that reimagines a fair and healthy world for all life forms.